The night
Citizens
was
of the
cold
galaxy,
and quiet, and the
the
stars
time
above
for
the city
decision
were
is
hidden
upon
by a
us.
heavy blanket of
We face a
clouds
threat
and
unlike
smoke,
any
as if the
before.
sky itself did not want to see what was about to happen, and the streets were almost empty except for a few shadows that moved fast between buildings carrying small bags and stolen food, while avoiding the cameras that hung from the poles, because the council saw everything and the council punished everything, and in this place no one wanted to be seen. Liam moved quickly down an alley with his breath short and his mind running faster than his legs, and he could feel the metal card in his pocket, the one that could open a door that should never be opened, and he had no idea if he should use it. But he knew he had no choice now, because the air was growing thin and the city was becoming a cage with no way out, and if he did nothing, then everyone would be gone before the next sun rose over the broken towers. Far above in the council tower, the elders watched a giant screen that showed every street, every home, every face in the city, and they spoke in whispers like snakes in the dark. One of them, with silver eyes, asked if the time had come to push the button and erase the last of the humans from the earth. But another shook his head and said not yet, not until the signal was ready, not until the escape routes were destroyed, because if even one human ship left the surface, then the plan would fail, and they could not risk failure now. Liam slipped into the shadows of a broken subway station where the air smelled of rust and damp concrete. And there he found Mara waiting for him. She had been part of the resistance longer than anyone else, and her eyes were sharp even in the dark. She asked if he had the card, and he nodded, and she took it from his hand, turning it over and over as if she could see its secrets without a reader. She told him the stories about the vault deep under the old mountains where something powerful slept. Something the council feared so much they buried it in the earth and built towers over it. And now that Card could open it, but only once. In another part of the city, the sound of heavy boots on metal floors echoed through a council barracks as the soldiers prepared for a night sweep. They were tall and wrapped in black armor, and their helmets hid their faces. Their orders were clear: find the resistance, find the boy with the card, and bring him in alive or dead. But if alive, then broken enough to never run again. Their leader, a man with a scar like a black river across his cheek, smiled as he imagined the hunt and the screams of those who thought they could escape. Mara led Liam deeper into the tunnels under the city, where the lights flickered and the walls were covered with old signs from before the council, before the cities were sealed, and before the skies were burned. She told him they had hours, maybe less, before the council made their move. She told him that when the button was pressed, everything in the lower districts would vanish in a wave of heat and light, and nothing would remain, not even ash, and that was why they had to reach the vault now, because inside was the only thing that could stop them, or maybe save them if they were fast enough. As they moved, Liam thought of the world above, of the parks he had never seen, and the rivers he had only read about in banned books. He thought of the stories his grandfather told about blue skies and open oceans and animals that ran free without collars or chips, but those things felt like dreams now, and dreams were dangerous because they made you believe in something better, and the council did not want anyone to believe in something better. Far away in the tower, the silver-eyed elder stared at a small clock on the wall, its hands moving closer to midnight. He asked the others again if they should press the button, and the answer was still not yet. But he could feel the impatience in the room like static in the air. They were waiting for one more signal from the satellites above the planet, and when it came, the skies over the city would glow like fire, and the screams would rise to the stars before fading into silence. In the tunnels, Mara stopped and listened. She could hear the faint sound of metal scraping on stone, soldiers above moving through access shafts, their armor clanging against the walls. Liam felt his chest tighten, and he wanted to run, but Mara put a hand on his arm and told him to move slow, because sound traveled far in these tunnels. They turned left then, right then, down a set of stairs, so old the edges of the steps crumbled under their feet until they reached a door covered in dust and locked with a panel that glowed faint blue in the dark. Liam took the card from his pocket, his hands shaking, and slid it into the slot. The panel hummed, and a voice spoke in a language he did not know. The door opened with a deep, heavy sound like the earth itself was moving. Mara stepped inside first, and the air inside was warmer and full of a strange smell like metal and ozone. In the middle of the room stood a single capsule covered in cables and lights, pulsing slowly like the beat of a heart. Liam asked what it was, and Mara said it was the key to leaving the planet, but she did not explain how. Outside in the streets, the soldiers moved closer to the tunnel entrance, their leader raising a hand for silence. As they surrounded the opening, he could feel the hunt ending soon, and he could already taste victory. Above them, the clouds began to swirl, as if the sky itself was watching what would happen next, and far above, that the satellites moved into position, sending signals down to the tower. In the tower, the silver-eyed elder stood, now his hand hovering over the button, the other elders nodding slowly. The satellites had confirmed there were no ships leaving orbit, not yet. The elder smiled thin and cold, and said they would end this before the humans could even begin. But in the deep tunnel, Liam reached for the capsule, feeling the hum through his fingers, and in that moment something inside the machine stirred, as if it had been sleeping for centuries and was now waking for the first time. Mara's eyes widened, and she told him to step back, but it was too late. The lights on the capsule flared bright, and the ground under their feet shook, dust falling from the ceiling above, as the sound of the city far away echoed down to them, a sound like the start of storm. And then far above, the elder's finger began to press the button. The human woke up inside the strange alien ship, feeling the cold metal floor beneath and the dim blue glow of lights all around. With his head still spinning for whatever the aliens had used to capture him, he slowly looked around and saw walls that seemed alive, moving slightly, as if breathing, and strange shapes flowing like liquid metal on their surface. He tried to remember what happened, but only bits came back: the flash in the sky, the blinding light, the sudden pull, and then darkness. His heart raced, and he knew this was not a dream. Far ahead, a large opening appeared, and from it stepped three alien beings, tall and slim, with elongated limbs and pale skin that almost shimmered under the lights. Their eyes were huge, black, and deep like endless oceans, and when they moved it was without a sound, as if their feet barely touched the floor. The human froze, unsure if he should run or speak, but his body refused to move. One of the aliens raised a hand, and a strange warmth spread through the human's mind. Suddenly, voices began to echo inside his head, though the aliens' mouths never moved. They spoke in a language that was not really words, but feelings and images flooding his mind. At once they asked who he was, where he came from, and why his kind harmed their world. He did not understand what they meant, but he felt their anger and confusion like a heavy weight pressing on his chest. The human tried to speak back, but his voice felt trapped. Instead, he thought as hard as he could, sending them his own images of Earth, of blue oceans, green forests, cities filled with people and life. The aliens paused, watching the pictures in silence. Then more images came from them, showing a planet much like Earth, once green and full of life, now covered in black scars and storms raging across its skies. He felt their sadness and understood they believed his kind had done the same to their world. They moved closer, and one touched his arm. It felt cold, yet somehow gentle, and in that touch came a rush of more visions, showing great ships crossing stars, wars fought over resources, worlds stripped bare, until nothing remained. The human wanted to shout that he was not like that, that not all humans were the same, but he did not know if they could believe him. Still, he pushed a feeling of hope toward them, showing families, children, laughter, kindness, trying to balance the weight of the images they had shown him. The tallest alien stepped back and seemed to consider his thoughts, then turned and motioned for him to follow. The human hesitated, but the floor beneath him shifted like a wave, carrying him forward, whether he wanted to go or not. They moved down a long corridor lined with strange glowing symbols that seemed to change when he looked at them, and doors that pulsed like they had hearts inside. Every sound was muted except for a low hum that came from everywhere. At once, they entered a vast chamber that opened to what looked like a giant window, but beyond it was not space as he knew it. Instead, it was a swirling field of colors, bright and dark, twisting together like a living storm. The alien explained in his mind that this was the fold, a place between places where their ships traveled faster than light. The human stared, unable to look away, the colors shifting into shapes he almost recognized, then fading again. In the center of the chamber stood a tall crystal pillar, glowing with a deep golden light. The aliens circled it and placed their hands upon it, and a strange bridge of light extended from the pillar to his chest, pulling something from within him. He gasped, feeling both fear and calm at the same time. The alien voices explained they were searching his truth, seeing if his soul carried the greed that had destroyed worlds before he tried to focus on his best memories, the times he had helped strangers. The moments of pure joy in his life and the deep love he held for his home. For what felt like hours but might have been minutes, the light connection pulsed, then finally faded. The aliens withdrew their hands and stepped back. The warmth in his mind lessened, but did not vanish. One of them sent a final image of Earth floating unharmed in the black of space, but surrounded by a shadow that slowly crept closer. It was a warning, not a threat. They told him his kind still had time, but not much. The choices of his people would decide if Earth would stay bright or fall into darkness like their world. The human tried to ask what he could do, but they only motioned for him to follow again, this time through another corridor leading to a chamber filled with strange plants glowing softly and giving off a sweet scent. He realized these were perhaps the last living pieces of their home world, preserved here like a garden in the stars. The aliens moved carefully among them, as if each leaf was precious beyond measure. They gave him a seed, small and silver, that pulsed faintly in his hand. They told him it could grow only if cared for with love and protected from greed. He felt the weight of this gift and wondered if it was a test or a chance for something greater. Then the floor shifted again, and he found himself standing near the same place he had first awoken. But now there was a shimmering portal opening before him. Through it, he saw the forests of Earth, the air warm and familiar. The tallest alien stepped forward and placed a hand on his shoulder, sending one last wave of feelings: trust, hope, and the faint sadness of parting. The human nodded, understanding that this might be the only time he would see them. As he stepped into the portal, the colors of the fold faded, and the sound of wind and birds returned. He was home, standing in the very spot where he had first looked up and seen that strange flash in the sky, the seed still warm in his palm, the ship, and its lights gone, as if they had never been there. Yet he knew it had happened, and that his life was now tied to something far beyond what he had ever imagined. He looked at the seed, feeling the weight of the warning and the hope it carried, knowing he could not tell the world everything, but that maybe, just maybe, he could start something that would grow. The air inside the alien ship was heavy and strange, making it hard for anyone to feel calm, and even harder to think clearly. As Captain Ryland slowly opened his eyes, he saw that the dim green light above was swaying like it was alive, casting shadows that twisted across the walls. The walls themselves were made of silver like metal, but it did not feel like any metal he knew. It was soft yet firm, and it seemed to hum gently, as if it were breathing around him. There were other humans, some standing, some sitting on the floor, all with confused and scared expressions. They had been taken from different places and now found themselves together inside this moving prison. Ryland looked to his right and saw Kira, a young woman with bright eyes, who was trying to talk to an older man in a low whisper. She seemed calm, but her hands trembled slightly. He could see her trying to comfort the man, but the fear was still in her face. Then Ryland turned his eyes toward the far side of the room, where a tall alien stood, its skin a deep blue with faint glowing lines running along its arms and neck. The alien wore no armor, only a smooth layer of cloth that looked like it had been woven from light itself. The alien's large black eyes scanned the room slowly, not in anger, but in a way that seemed to measure every person. Suddenly, a soft sound like the chime of a bell filled the room, and another alien entered, this one shorter, but with a silver crest on its head. It spoke in a flowing voice that none of the humans could understand, yet somehow its meaning appeared in Ryland's mind. The words were not heard, but felt like they were placed directly into his thoughts. The alien told them they were safe, that no harm would come, but the tone carried something else, something that felt like a hidden truth not yet revealed. The floor beneath them began to shift slowly, turning transparent, until they could see the space outside. Below was a world unlike Earth, a massive planet covered in deep purple oceans and vast crystal mountains that caught the light of two suns. The sight stole the breath of everyone in the room. The colors were too vivid, too unreal, yet they were real. The alien ship moved silently through the air, heading toward a floating city made of glass towers and bridges that hung in the sky without any visible support. Each tower shimmered with energy, and small ships like silver birds darted between them in smooth, graceful arcs. As they drew closer, the shorter alien approached Ryland, and without touching him, it made a motion with its hands, and suddenly Ryland felt a rush of images in his mind. He saw visions of war, burning cities, and alien ships falling from the sky. he saw other alien beings fighting against the ones who now stood before him. And then he saw something more disturbing, a vision of humans fighting alongside these blue-skinned aliens against another unknown enemy. The images faded, leaving Rylan dizzy and uncertain. Kira stepped closer to him, asking in a hushed voice what he had seen. He told her briefly, though he did not have the words to describe everything. She listened with wide eyes and said that maybe they were not prisoners, maybe they were chosen for something bigger. Rylan wanted to believe her, but the thought of fighting in some alien war filled him with dread. He had seen too many battlefields already in his life back on Earth. The ship entered the floating city and landed gently on a glowing platform without any noise at all. The doors opened, and warm light flooded in the air, was fresh, carrying a faint scent of flowers, though there were no plants in sight. The aliens motioned for the humans to follow, and they stepped out onto a smooth walkway that seemed to float over the endless drop below. Around them, the city was alive with movement. Tall, elegant alien figures glided past, carrying objects that looked like crystal tablets, while others moved in pairs, speaking in soft, musical tones. The humans drew stares from many, but none approached. They were led into a tall building where walls of water flowed without spilling, and golden lights moved inside the streams. As if alive, the group entered a circular room where a figure sat on a throne-like seat. This alien was taller than any they had seen before, its skin a deep silver and its eyes glowing faintly with gold. The shorter alien stepped forward and spoke in its flowing language again, and once more the meaning filled Rylan's mind. This was their leader, the one who had ordered them brought here. The leader said the humans were important for the survival of not just this alien world, but their own. The leader explained that a great enemy was moving through the stars, destroying every world it reached, and Earth was on its path. The only way to stop it was for their species to join forces. But the enemy was unlike anything humans had faced before, could not be reasoned with. And it would not stop until everything was gone. The leader said they had been chosen because they had the spirit to fight and the ability to inspire others. Some humans reacted with disbelief, others with fear. One man shouted that he wanted to go home right now. But the leader did not respond with anger. Instead, it said the choice was theirs, though leaving would mean facing the coming danger alone. Rylan felt the weight of the decision pressing on him. He thought of the vision he had been shown, the burning cities, the alien ships, falling, the destruction of Earth. He did not want to be part of another war, but he could not ignore what he had seen. The group was given time to rest in chambers that were both alien and strangely comfortable. The walls changed color based on their mood, and soft music played from nowhere. As Rylan sat on a bed that felt like a cloud, Kira came in and sat beside him. She told him she believed the aliens were telling the truth, and that maybe this was their chance to make a difference. Rylan looked at her, seeing the determination in her eyes. He wondered if he could find that same strength in himself. That night, Rylan dreamed of flying above Earth, but the sky was filled with strange lights and shadows below. The cities were still whole, but he could feel something watching from beyond the stars, waiting. He woke with a start, his heart pounding, and realized the choice was already made deep inside. He knew he could not walk away from this, not when so much was at stake, even if it meant never seeing home again. The sky above the alien world was deep green and gold, with soft waves of light moving like a slow ocean in the heavens, and the ground below shimmered as if it was breathing alive with strange glowing flowers and plants that swayed without any wind. And far in the distance, the sharp peaks of black mountains rose high, touching the rolling clouds, making the whole place feel like a dream. Yet it was not a dream, because Ethan was standing there with his feet sinking slightly into the soft moss-like ground, and his heart pounding with both fear and wonder, as the gentle hum of the land seemed to flow into his bones, giving him a strange calm that felt dangerous in its beauty. And he could see the alien city in the valley below, its towers shining with crystal light that moved like water, climbing the walls and roofs, making it seem alive. And watching him while in the sky, small silver creatures with long wings flew in circles, their voices like whispers in a language his mind could almost understand. And he took a slow breath, trying to remember his purpose for coming here, because every step closer made him feel as if the world itself wanted him to forget and simply stay and be part of it forever. But he knew there was something waiting in that city, something that could decide his fate and the fate of his home, and he had no choice but to go forward. He began to walk down the slope, his boots brushing against plants that curled and opened like they were greeting him, and each time they touched him, he felt a flash of memory, not his own memories of rivers of light mountains that floated in the air and voices that sang in harmony with the stars. And he almost stopped again, because the pull of this place was so strong, yet he forced himself onward, and as he drew closer to the city, he saw tall alien figures moving along the crystal paths there. Shapes slim and graceful, their skin like smooth metal that reflected the light around them, making them almost invisible in certain angles, and their eyes deep pools of blue fire that never blinked. And when one of them turned to look directly at him, he felt a pressure in his mind to question, without words, asking why he had come and what he carried inside his soul. And for a moment he thought of lying, but he realized the thought was foolish because these beings could see the truth without hearing his voice, so he simply thought of his world, of the danger that was coming and the need for help. And he felt the pressure ease, as if they understood, and then the being turned and continued walking without another glance. The great gates of the city were not made of stone or metal, but of flowing light shaped into two giant spirals that moved slowly inward, as if breathing. And when Ethan stepped between them, a cool wave of energy passed over him, clearing his thoughts and sharpening his senses so much that every color, every sound, every scent became almost too much to bear. And inside the city, the air shimmered with thin threads of gold drifting like dust in sunlight, but each thread carried tiny patterns that seemed to tell stories, and he realized this was their way of remembering history, not in books or carvings, but in living streams of memory, floating in the air, and he could almost reach out and touch them. As he walked deeper, he saw structures that curved and twisted like the growth of trees and vines, but they were made from crystal and metal fused together in ways that seemed impossible, and bridges that hung with no supports connected towers that swayed gently, as if alive, and in the open spaces alien children floated a few feet above the ground, playing with small orbs of light that danced around them and burst into tiny shapes of animals and birds that sang before fading away in the sound of. The city was not loud, but a soft music that came from the movement of its people and the flow of the crystal walls themselves. Finally, he reached the center, where a wide platform of black glass lay under a dome of swirling green energy, and there stood the tallest alien he had yet seen, draped in a robe of silver threads that seemed to move on their own like streams of liquid, and their eyes burned brighter than any others, and Ethan knew this was the leader or something close to it. And without a word, the being raised a hand, and a shape appeared in the air, between them a vision of Earth, not as it was, but as it could be, consumed by shadows falling into silence. And then another vision, Earth alive with light and harmony, its people and alien allies standing together, and Ethan understood the choice before him and before them. And he spoke in a voice that trembled, but held firm, saying that he was ready to do whatever was needed to bring the second vision into reality. The alien leader stepped forward and placed one hand on Ethan's chest, and in that moment his mind was filled with images and voices, memories of worlds far beyond the stars, of wars fought and lost, of peace built from the ashes of destruction. And in those memories he saw that trust was not easily given among the stars, and that his own strength would be tested in ways he could not yet imagine. But he also felt a thread of connection forming between himself and this being, and through them to the entire city, and it was like a door opening inside his heart, and he knew that even if the path ahead was filled with danger, he was no longer walking it alone. The leader then turned and motioned to a group of aliens who approached, carrying an object shaped like a sphere of clear crystal with a soft blue light swirling within, and they placed it in Ethan's hands, and he felt warmth and power flowing through it into him. And he realized this was no ordinary gift. It was something alive, something that could grow with him and protect him if he learned how to use it. And the leader's voice finally entered his mind, saying that this was the key to the Alliance and the shield against the coming darkness, and that he must guard it with his life, because many would seek to take it, and if it fell into the wrong hands, the second vision would never come to pass. Ethan nodded, and the weight of the sphere seemed to settle into his very soul, and he felt a strange mix of fear and hope as the leader stepped back and the dome above them opened, showing the strange sky once more, but now he noticed new shapes in it, dark and distant, moving slowly but surely toward the world. And he understood the urgency of his mission. And without another word, the aliens began to prepare something behind him, strange machines that rose from the ground, unfolding like giant flowers of metal and light. And he knew they were building the way for him to return, but he also knew that his journey was far from over. The hum of the city grew stronger around him, as if the entire place was aware of the moment, and the air seemed to vibrate with a low song that he could feel in his bones. And the children stopped their games and watched silently. The flying silver creatures above circled lower, their wings glinting in the green and gold sky, and Ethan stood there holding the sphere, feeling the connection to this place and these beings deep in his chest. And he made a silent promise to himself that he would not fail them, and that he would see the second vision become real, no matter what it cost him. The deep corridors of the alien fortress stretched endlessly in front of Aaron as the dull hum of strange machines echoed all around, and the air was thick with a strange smell like metal mixed with burning stone, and the dim lights above flickered in strange colors that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of a giant heart somewhere deep in the structure. And Aaron could feel every pulse in his bones, like the fortress itself was alive and watching him with cold, unblinking eyes while he moved forward. With silent steps, Mara followed close behind, clutching the stolen alien device in her hands, and her eyes scanned every shadow like a predator searching for hidden danger. And the rest of the small human group kept their weapons ready, though their weapons felt almost useless against the kind of power they had seen the aliens use. But the group moved anyway, because they knew stopping now would mean the end of everything they were trying to protect, and every step forward was one more step toward breaking the control that had held humanity down for so long. The air grew warmer the deeper they went, until Aaron began to sweat under the heavy gear, and his mind flashed back to the day they first discovered the truth, the day they learned that the aliens had been manipulating human history for centuries, keeping wars alive, to control numbers, using disease to weaken them, and spreading lies to keep them fighting each other instead of seeing the real enemy. And now, walking through the fortress, he could feel the weight of all those centuries pressing on his shoulders. The hallway opened into a huge chamber, and the sight froze everyone in place, because the walls were made of a translucent material like glass. But inside that glass were hundreds of human figures floating suspended in thick, glowing liquid. Their eyes closed, their bodies unmoving, and the strange light from the walls cast eerie patterns across their faces, making them look both peaceful and trapped, like they were dreaming in a prison they could never escape. And Aaron realized these were people taken from Earth, never to be seen again. Mara stepped closer to the wall and pressed her hand against it, and the figure inside twitched slightly like it had felt her touch, and her voice cracked as she whispered that this one looked like her brother, who had vanished 3 years ago. And the group exchanged grim looks, because it confirmed what they had feared. The aliens were not just watching humans from a distance. They were taking them and storing them like resources, waiting for some purpose that the humans could not yet understand. And the thought filled Aaron with cold rage. They moved on because they could not help the ones trapped in the walls, not yet. And the device in Mara's hands grew warmer as they approached another set of sealed doors, which opened slowly with a deep grinding sound, revealing a room filled with alien soldiers, standing perfectly still, their strange armor reflecting the dim light like dark water, and their faces hidden behind smooth helmets that seemed to be part of their bodies. And for a long moment, the humans thought the soldiers were statues, until one of them tilted its head ever so slightly. The group froze, their hearts pounding, as the alien soldier stepped forward, moving with slow, precise grace, and in its hands it held a weapon unlike anything the humans had seen before, a long staff with a blade that shimmered like liquid light. And Aaron realized they were too close to the heart of the fortress to avoid detection now, and whatever happened next would decide if they made it to the control core, or if their mission ended here. Mara activated the device, and a strange hum filled the air, a low vibration that seemed to cut through the bones of everyone in the room, including the alien soldier, whose movements slowed as if the air had grown thick like water. And the humans saw their chance. They moved quickly, slipping past the frozen alien toward the far door, while the rest of the soldiers began to stir their heads turning slowly toward the intruders as the hum from the device began to fade. Aaron reached the door first and slammed his hand against the panel beside it, and to his relief it slid open, revealing a narrow spiral ramp that descended deep into the fortress. And without a word, they ran down the ramp, their footsteps echoing in the tight space as shouts in the alien language rang out above them, the sound like grinding metal and breaking stone, and Aaron could feel the weight of pursuit pressing closer with every breath. The ramp ended in a vast circular room with a single column of glowing energy rising from the floor to the ceiling, and in the center of that column floated a structure that looked like a heart made of glass and silver, pulsing with light in perfect rhythm. And Aaron knew instantly this was at the control core, the very thing the aliens used to keep humanity under their grip, feeding information into their machines and directing the hidden influence that shaped human history and futures without their knowing. Mara handed Aaron the device, her eyes locking with his, and without speaking, they both knew there would be no second chance. If they failed here, it would be over not just for them, but for every human alive. And Aaron stepped toward the column, feeling the heat from the energy washing over his skin like fire, while the rest of the group took positions around the room to hold back whatever came through the doors next. As Aaron approached the core of the device and his hands began to pulse in sync with the alien heart, its hum rising until it filled his skull and made it hard to think. And for a moment, he felt something like a whisper in his mind, a voice, not his own, asking why he was doing this and offering visions of peace and comfort if he would just walk away. But Aaron clenched his jaw and stepped closer, pushing through the wall of energy and feeling it tear at his body like a storm of hot glass. The instant he reached the core, the doors behind them burst open, and alien soldiers poured into the room, their weapons blazing with streams of energy that tore chunks from the walls and floor, while the human defenders returned fire desperately, trying to hold them back. And in the chaos, Aaron pressed the device against the glassy surface of the core, and for a single moment, everything went silent, as if the entire fortress had drawn in a single breath. Then the core erupted in light brighter than the sun, filling the room with a wave of heat and force that knocked Aaron backward and sent alien soldiers sprawling. And in that light, he saw flashes of images, cities on Earth breaking free, ships rising from hidden hangars, people waking from some invisible fog that had clouded their minds for generations. And Aaron understood the core was breaking, the control was slipping, and humanity was waking up. But the light faded quickly, and as Aaron staggered to his feet, he saw the core, still pulsing though its rhythm was now erratic like a dying heart. And he knew their work was not yet done, because the fortress was still alive and the aliens were still coming. And if they wanted to finish this, they would have to push deeper still into the heart of the enemy's stronghold until there was nothing left for the aliens to use against them and nothing left to stop humanity from finally escaping their control. The tunnels shook again, and dust fell from the ceiling as the alien machines roared somewhere above the ground, their sound like metal grinding against stone, their echo reaching every corner of the underground halls. The humans ran through narrow paths, lit only by the faint glow of the emergency lights. The air was heavy and dry, making each breath harder to take. Jalen led the group, his eyes focused on the path ahead, while Mira kept checking behind them to be sure they were not being followed. The group knew that one wrong turn could lead them straight into the hands of the enemy. They had been running for what felt like hours when the path suddenly opened into a large chamber filled with strange alien structures that pulsed with a faint blue light. The walls seemed alive, covered in thin vines of glowing wires that hummed softly. At first they thought it was just another strange part of the tunnels. But then Ezra stepped closer and froze. He whispered that this was no ordinary room. It was the final barrier between them and the surface. He could feel the power in the air, like electricity running through every stone of the walls. Jalen asked him if there was a way to pass through. Ezra studied the vines and saw they connected to a tall crystal tower in the center of the chamber. The crystal pulsed like a slow heartbeat, sending waves of light across the room. Mira looked at it with suspicion. She knew that nothing in these tunnels was here by accident. This tower was likely built to stop them from escaping. Ezra said it was some kind of lock, and if they could break its energy link, the path to the surface would open. But breaking it would not be simple. they had to disrupt the crystal's core without triggering the alien defenses around it. The group spread out, searching for a way to approach without touching the glowing wires, which they guessed might be deadly. Kai, the youngest of the group, spotted small platforms circling the tower, each one floating in mid-air like stepping stones leading up to the crystal core. Jalen decided they would use those platforms to climb, but first they had to deal with the strange floating sentinels hovering around the tower, each sentinel shaped like a spinning blade covered in eyes that glowed deep red. They moved in slow circles, but every now and then darted toward one of the platforms, scanning for intruders. Mira suggested distracting them while Ezra and Jalen climbed toward the core. She picked up a piece of metal from the floor and threw it toward the far end of the room. The loud clanging echoed, and the sentinels turned instantly, flying toward the sound, giving Ezra and Jalen the opening they needed. They stepped onto the first platform, feeling it sway under their weight. The air around the crystal grew warmer as they climbed higher. With each step, the hum of the tower grew louder and faster, like a heart beating in panic. Halfway up, a bright flash of blue light burst from the crystal, making the platforms shake violently. Jalen grabbed Ezra before he could fall, but the light had drawn the attention of the sentinels. Two of them rushed back from the far wall and sliced through the air toward the climbers. Mira shouted for them to hurry. She picked up another piece of metal and threw it again, this time farther, but the sentinels ignored it. They had locked onto Jalen and Ezra. With no other choice, Jalen pulled out the strange alien blade they had taken from a fallen enemy earlier in the tunnels. The blade shimmered with shifting colors as he swung it through the air, meeting the first sentinel head on. Sparks exploded as metal met alien alloy. The sentinel let out a high-pitched screech before falling into the abyss below. Ezra quickly touched the edge of the next platform and pulled himself up with Jalen close behind, but the second sentinel was faster and nearly reached Ezra before Mira aimed her old energy pistol and fired. The shot hit the sentinel's center, making it spin out of control before crashing into the crystal tower. The impact shook the whole chamber, and a crack appeared on the side of the crystal. Ezra shouted that this might be their chance. He ran the last few steps to the top platform and placed both hands on the core. He felt its energy rush through him like a storm. The glowing wires on the walls flickered and dimmed, but then a deep rumble came from below, and the floor beneath the others began to split, revealing a dark pit filled with rising smoke. From the pit came the sound of something massive moving. Chains rattled and heavy steps echoed as a huge alien guardian emerged, its body like a mix of rock and metal, glowing veins running along its arms, its face hidden behind a smooth mask with a single vertical slit of light. It raised one arm, and the entire chamber trembled. Jalen shouted for Ezra to finish whatever he was doing, but the core resisted. It pushed back against Ezra's will, as if alive, not wanting to die. Mira and Kai fired at the Guardian, but the bullets and beams bounced harmlessly off its armored skin. The Guardian moved toward the tower, each step shaking the platforms. Jalen leaped from his spot onto the Guardian's arm, stabbing the alien blade deep into one of the glowing veins. The Guardian let out a roar like a storm breaking over the ocean. It swung its arm, trying to throw Jalen off, but he held on and pulled the blade free, causing a burst of blue energy to spray into the air. The distraction was enough. Ezra focused all his strength and pushed into the core again. This time, the crystal screamed with a sound that shook the air and shattered into 1,000 shards. The glowing wires on the walls went dark, and the chamber's ceiling split open, revealing a shaft of pale light from the surface. Above, the platforms began to fall one by one, and the Guardian staggered, its light fading from its veins. Jalen jumped down, landing near Mira and Kai. They ran to Ezra, who was nearly unconscious from the effort. The pale light above was their way out, but the chamber was collapsing, stones and metal falling from the ceiling. The Guardian made one last attempt to stand, but its body crumbled into dust, leaving only silence behind. Jalen lifted Ezra over his shoulder, and the group sprinted toward the shaft, climbing up the broken walls and fallen stones toward the light. Their hands reached the edge of the opening, and fresh air rushed over them. For the first time in what felt like forever, they could see the sky, a deep shade of gray with streaks of gold from the setting sun. But they knew this was not the end. Somewhere out there, the alien masters still waited, and they would not give up the hunt. so easily, yet for now, they had broken the last barrier between them and freedom, and each of them carried the fire of defiance in their hearts ready for whatever came next. The sky was a deep burning red as the massive alien fleet descended upon the last human stronghold. Their dark ships stretched across the horizon, casting long shadows over the land below. The air trembled with the roar of their engines, and the ground shook as their heavy weapons prepared to fire the final strike against those who dared to resist their rule. Humanity had fought for years, but now it seemed the end was near. Every city had fallen, every defense had been destroyed, yet still this last group of survivors refused to give, and standing together at the edge of their ruined homeland, ready to face whatever came next. The leader, a tall man with scarred skin and fierce eyes, looked over his people and spoke with a voice full of strength. "We will not bow to them. We will not let them take the last of our freedom. If we are to fall, we will fall as humans with hearts unbroken." His words filled the air like fire, and the crowd answered with a cry of unity, their voices mixing into one sound that rose above the rumble of the enemy fleet. The aliens had underestimated humans from the start, believing them to be fragile and weak creatures that could be bent to their will, but humans had learned to adapt. They had turned every weapon of the enemy into their own tool of survival. They had hidden in shadows, moved through ruins, and used the land itself as a shield against the alien hunters. Now, as the fleet closed and the survivors revealed the true reason they had gathered here for months, they had been building something in secret hidden beneath the ruins of the old city, a machine unlike anything the aliens had ever seen, a creation born from stolen alien technology and the desperate brilliance of human minds. It was called the Ark, and it was their only hope. Its great metal frame hummed with energy as power surged through its core, ready to tear open the fabric of space itself and carry them far away from this dying world to a place where the aliens could never follow. The leader signaled to his engineers, and they rushed to the controls. The Ark began to glow brighter than the sun, its lights spilling across the battlefield and forcing even the alien ships to pull back in caution. The ground shook harder, now not from enemy fire, but from the force of the Ark awakening. The aliens quickly realized what was happening and moved to strike. Their cannons lit the sky with fire, but the humans had prepared for this moment. Every soldier, every fighter, every volunteer rushed to defend the Ark using every weapon they had scavenged from years of war. The air was filled with the sounds of battle, screams, roars, and the thunder of explosions. Yet the humans did not break. They fought like shadows, moving faster than the enemy could track, cutting down alien soldiers in the streets and on the hills. Every moment they bought was another step closer to the Ark reaching full power. The leader himself fought on the front lines, his blade flashing in the red light as he cut through the alien ranks. His body moved with the strength of someone who knew this was the last fight of his life. Behind him, children, elders, and the wounded were being guided into the Ark by the few who could not fight but could still serve as protectors. Every face carried the same look, not of fear, but of defiance. The aliens grew desperate, sending their largest war machines forward. These towering beasts of metal and fire had destroyed entire human armies in the past, but now they found themselves slowed by traps set long before. This day, deep pits lined with explosives and hidden charges erupted beneath their feet, tearing them apart. The humans used everything the land gave them, and more. Soon the leader received the signal. The Ark was ready. It was now or never. He shouted for everyone to get inside. The massive doors of the Ark began to close, the light inside growing brighter with each passing second. Alien ships swooped down, firing wildly, but their shots bounced harmlessly off the Ark's energy shield, a shield powered by the very technology they had once used to enslave humans. The leader was the last to enter, turning only once to look at the burning world behind him. He knew they could never come back. This was the end of the planet they had called home for thousands of years, but it was also the start of something greater inside the Ark. The people held on to one another as the walls vibrated with raw power. The sound was like the roar of 1,000 storms. Then, with a final blinding flash, the Ark tore free from the world, ripping through the air and vanishing into the void. The alien fleet fired again and again, but their weapons struck only empty space. Humanity had escaped their control. The leader moved among his people, assuring them that they were safe for now, but deep inside he knew the journey ahead would not be easy. The Ark was powerful yet untested, and the place they were heading was unknown. It was a gamble one. They had no choice but to take outside the windows of the Ark. The endless stars stretched across the black ocean of space. The survivors stared at them in awe. For many, it was the first time they had seen the sky beyond the prison of their homeworld. It felt like freedom, tasted like hope. The leader stood at the front, his eyes scanning the stars, as if searching for a sign. He thought of all they had lost, the friends buried in the ruins, the cities turned to dust, the memories burned away by war. But he also thought of what they still had, each other, and the will to live free. The Ark's engines pulsed with steady rhythm, carrying them deeper into the unknown. Behind them, the alien fleet hovered over an empty land, their victory hollow, for they had not destroyed humanity. They had only set them free. The aliens did not understand it yet, but they had lost more than a battle. They had lost their grip on a species that could not be broken. The leader finally spoke to his people, his voice calm and strong. We are no longer theirs to control. We are no longer prey. We are the last of our world. But we will build a new one out there among the stars, where their chains cannot reach us, and where our children will grow under the light of suns. They will never see. The crowd answered with quiet determination, their eyes fixed on the future that awaited them in the dark infinity of space. The Ark flew on its silver frame, shining against the black, its engines singing the song of freedom. And though they did not know what dangers lay ahead, they knew one thing for certain: it was too late to stop them.